Awesome. Very nice to have you with us, Tessy. Welcome to Social Hacks Academy. How are you doing?
I am good. I'm good. In beautiful Zurich, and it's going well. It's going well.
Nice.
It's really cold, but everyone is healthy and happy. So nothing.
Okay.
To complain.
What does cold means to you? Like how many degrees is it?
Oh, it's not that bad. It's like -2 Celsius.
Okay. Here in Athens at the moment, we are around 0, and we are all like having very big problems with snowfall and stuff. It's been a chaos actually.
Oh wow. Okay. Yes.
So
yes.
I'm Damian. I'm one of the co-founders of Social Hacks Academy. Very pleased to meet you. And I have never, when I'm trying to do some research for a guest, I have never been so challenged and humble than with you looking at your LinkedIn profile. It's really crazy. So let me give our participants a bit of context. So you have received the UN Medal of Recognition for a mission you were in. You have received an award for the Freedom of the City of London 2020. You have Women of Decade Award from the World Economic Forum.
Women Economic. Yes.
Yeah, Women Economic. Yes. The Global Empowerment Award for your work in Africa, Leader of the Year 2019, Best Woman in Education, and a whole lot more. So do you ever sleep? Do you have time for that? Or it's just work and and more work?
Well, a good question. And I love sleeping. And if I don't sleep, I get so grumpy, you could ask my husband. But right now, so I'm a mom of 4. I have 3 teenagers and I have a newborn baby who turned 5 months today.
Oh, bless.
And he's teething. So Damian, I am not sleeping right now, but not because of work. I can tell you, my eye bags are probably huge. Thank God for concealer. Whoever invented that is a saint. It's, but with work, it's just, I love doing the things I do. And I work with fantastic people. I surround myself with individuals who are so much more intelligent than I am. So it's just nice to see that my work is being received so well and that people give me recognitions and accolades for it. It really humbles me.
Wow. Yes, it's always about the team and the people, and that what it's always a team behind any success, award, whatever. Tell us a bit about yourself. Like growing up, you obviously have achieved incredible things. So take us a bit through like your. Before we go to the actual topic of today, I really want to understand your drive. What brought you to this place to start achieving this incredible impact?
That's a really good question. It's a question I get asked a lot. When did that start? The women empowerment work I do and my advocacy, philanthropy, my drive for entrepreneurship. Always, I would say it started very young, very organically, just seeing everything my father has been doing and is still doing. He is a very, very, very busy man helping people all over the place. He just retired, but that doesn't stop him. When I was young, he was head of company, but at the same time, he was a politician, and people would come day and night to ask him for help or advice, and he would never turn anyone away. And he was just always advocating for better conditions for the workers, better community work, schools. And that definitely inspired me and has been a big part of why I am what I am today, because I have seen it through role model of my own parents. Mm-hmm. Then, of course, in Luxembourg, and I'm very blessed to come from Luxembourg, and it makes me really proud to be from Luxembourg as well. There's a lot of opportunities, and because it's so small, you really are part of innovation in everyday life, even as a normal citizen. And that as well, seeing that, and, the government, constituencies, the schools, even all of these clubs, they really ask you from a young age on already, hey, be involved, you want to be part of this, so you automatically in it already somehow, and your friends go, so it becomes kind of like something that is part of your community anyways from a very young age. So I was very lucky that I had this opportunity because it was just what was around me, and so that kind of made me what I am now.
Okay. Obviously, yes. The people you surround yourself with, the place you are, allows you to dream potentially bigger and achieve incredible things. You mentioned we share definitely one thing: a drive for entrepreneurship. Where does this start from you? Like, what happened? What caused this drive?
To be honest, it started quite late for me, because first I was very much into, I was in the military to start. That was my first real job. Before, I was helping out and I was a volunteer here and there, but my real job at first was being in the military. Then I worked for corporates. I worked for Vice Media as the director for Middle East, Africa, and Europe for Impact. And so corporate and military work first. And then I thought to myself, well, I was going through a divorce and I have two teenage sons. One will be 16 next month and the other one is 14. And I thought to myself, well, I'm a mother first and foremost, and I have obligations towards my children, also resource-wise, financial-wise, but how can I make it happen to be there for them also now as being teenagers? They need me more, or they need me even for different things more than they did when they were younger. So I really want to be present to help them to become who they want to be, right? But how can I accommodate that with the time of a corporate life or in the military? It's really tricky, right? And then you pay for a babysitter or a nanny, and that money that you actually get, that you work for, you need to give for either a childcare or a nanny at home. And so I thought, I don't want to do that. And let's try it, right? And I had some resources on the side because I do understand that not everyone can take that leap of faith. It's really, will it work? You as an entrepreneur will understand it can also go bust, right? So it either works or it doesn't work. And so you have invested a lot of money and time in it. But I thought, hey, let's do it. And I created my own consultancy. And that is how it really has started, with Finding Butterflies 3 years ago now. And from there on, I created new businesses and more, and here and there. And I started to believe in myself that I actually can make it work with my own ideas and my own companies. Since then, I keep going and create new things all the time.
When you mentioned consulting, what is it that you consult with, and who do you do that for?
So the consultancy is a consultancy on strategic communication and sustainability projects, if you want, the SDGs at its heart. But not just the SDGs because they're the SDGs, just kind of like what makes us humans human, right? What is humanity and how can we give back while also having a return? Because still corporates, they like to be part of the movement to give back, but for them and their shareholders, they want to have a return, right? So how can you reconcile the needs of the shareholders, of the company directors, to please the shareholders, but at the same time give back? And that is something I specialized in. And I've been enjoying that very much. So clients such as the Vodafone Foundation, has been very insightful projects that I have been doing. And that is my consultancy.
Do you think the change? I feel that companies more and more starting to care for any reason about sustainability and the SDGs. They try to align with some of them. Do you think this should come from the law? For example, Dutch companies, big companies, they need to give back 1% of their income, for example, something like that. Or do you think it should be driven by them, by their need to give back? what do you think of the future of business? How is sustainability? I feel that sustainability and alignment with SDGs will play a big role. What is your take on that?
I think that's a very difficult question and very difficult to answer, actually. I do not think that you can legally enforce that a company should give 1% back. I think that's impossible. And because capitalism, the system we're all kind of operating in, just doesn't allow for that. So I think it would be very difficult to legally enforce that. However, incentives such as, the youth that is the youth, the very active youth that we're experiencing on our social media channels, also the youth that is being employed now, coming out of university education and so on, they demand that. So they rather work for a company who does give back than just for the money. Of course, not everyone is the same. We don't put everyone in the basket, but that is something that I have been seeing, a new trend, if you want, over the last 5 years, certainly. And I like that. So is it something that will stick around for the future? Very possible. And I really hope so, because it's something that is dear to my heart as well. But again, if someone creates a company, it's not for the law to decide what they should do with their company, right? It's their company. And as such, I think you should create incentives like tax breaks or something like that to make it appealing more for them, specifically for the hardcore businessmen, that they just think it's also an advantage to do so, because they will get so much more in return, because they will get, for example, more customers, because they are more aligned with the SDG agenda anyways. And if they see that their favorite brand is involved, they are more likely to buy more products, right? Things like that. I think by creating these incentives, we are getting more closer to something sustainable than enforcing people, which kind of like takes away the purpose of the whole thing anyways, right? We're there to help one another, and it should come from the heart. If you force something, it creates a negative connotation to it. So it's a very tricky question, but that is kind of like how I would see it.
I hear you. Do you think the SDGs, like making all this fuss about the SDGs, has it helped philanthropy or social entrepreneurship in regards to CSR and companies? Like, do you think it has built like a bridge between the two different worlds?
Well, it definitely has informed. It has created awareness, but it's tricky because the SDGs so far haven't really worked, right? So we have created one set of SDGs, and now it's the second set already. And I think it's a very ambitious project, but you need to start somewhere, right? Yes. I just think, and that is always a tricky thing, which goes aligned really well with this. When you have a company that says, we want to be carbon neutral by 2050 or something like that, I always need to laugh, because I know it's rubbish. It means nothing. Because look at this, right? We're 2022 now, 2050. That is almost 30 years. Yeah. That is almost my whole life, right? I am definitely a different person than I was 30 years ago, right? I was definitely a different person 2 years ago, before the COVID pandemic really started, and now. And hence, if you have companies that are pledging even a 5-year strategy, in 5 years, we want to be so much more different than we are now, it's tricky, right? Because 5 years is a long time, 10 years is a long time. The 80s are not the 90s, right? So I'm always very cautious with these things. And so with the SDGs, I think it's a good guiding for people to understand what is needed in society, right? Kind of like a rule book, the pillars of what humanity should, or a community should entail, for everyone to kind of like have the same opportunities. Or at least get close to it, right? Which should be everyone's right: the right to food, the right to education, the right to, the right infrastructures, and so on, right? And so I think these are things that should be there for everyone. So definitely it informs, again, as I said before, and it advocates for the right thing. But it is difficult for business to still understand that. Also, how, when you look at the old businesses, right, big company, very established companies who are there since decades, for them, I think it's not like they don't want to do it, but there's a lot of history, and history in companies means a lot of paperwork and bureaucracy. And so how do you change all of that in order to be there in time? When you arrive on time, then it has changed already so much that you're already late again. So it's really, I think we need to do that.
What if the consumers demand it though, through their, let's say they stop purchasing less, or they even go ahead and demand like for this or that company to do something about it? Do you think that could be a way? Because capitalism is about profit. So 100%. If they lose the profit, then they might, okay.
100%. Well, you have seen it, for example, with Lululemon, right? The CEO at the time was making a comment that the trousers were not, I think it was Lululemon, that the trousers were not accommodating for bigger size women. And the share price dropped, right? And so I think when you look at consumerism, you really definitely need to know your consumer, and you need to know what they want. And of course, if you don't want to listen to them, people are not going to buy, right? If you don't sell the product they want, then why are you doing it in the first place? Because they're not going to buy it. So totally agree with you. Pressure is definitely needed in order to change something, right? It's like taking a rock, right? Without pressure, you can't create diamonds, right? There needs to be pressure in order for something beautiful and valuable to come out. So I should definitely believe in the power of community and the power of the group, right? We have seen it in different uprisings as well against governments. We have seen it in all kinds of domains. So definitely the power of community is very strong and is very needed. And I very advocate for that as well, because it is a tool for fast change. But with fast change, it also needs to become sustainable, right? And how do you make it sustainable then is then the challenge of the companies. And I think the pandemic has really taught us that. Look at the aviation industry, right? They needed to innovate. Look at a lot of shops that were not online, that were just physically in the street, high streets. They needed to innovate as well. So I think if the pandemic has taught us one thing, it's definitely how can you change your whole business model within a year?
Yes, you get slapped in the face. For us being hackers, we love that technology now is deeper into our life, because we do think it can enable so much things as business. What about social entrepreneurship? Let's go a bit to the real reason we are here to talk about. How would you define, for our attendees who might have not heard the term before, how would you define social entrepreneurship? I know it's hard. I'm not looking for a real thing. Like, what is it for you?
Well, for me, it's trying to succeed with a business idea that matters to you, that you really like, while also, creating something valuable for the community. Because there's entrepreneurship, but there's also social entrepreneurship. You can just do business, but you can also do business, have a return, and give back. So for me, definitely with Finding Butterflies, there's a very strong angle of social entrepreneurship included. And it's really about making profit while also giving back for me. But of course, some other people create companies just to give back, right? So it depends really on what you want to do. But for that company specifically, excluding all of my philanthropic work, it is for profit with an angle of giving back, because that absolutely matters to me as well.
What is about legal entities? There is this, we have like the for-profit company, probably it's called limited in your country. Then we have the NGO, non-profit legal entity. Also not recently, but in the last year, we have the social enterprise. About the legal entity, if let's say there is a social entrepreneur here listening to us, which one do you think would work best? And I don't want exactly like Luxembourg perspective or Greek, because they are all a
They're
bit
very
different,
exactly.
but at the same time, the mindset is quite the same, like between the NGO, the for-profit, and the social enterprise, or even the hybrid social enterprise.
Well, it really depends on what the end goal is of why you're creating the legal entity in the first place, right? Do you want to make profit? You create an LLP or a GmbH, as they're called in German or whatever. If you want to do, if you want to do profit as well, you can, but give back to charity, NGO-ish as well. Then you have the charity status, which is just for charity. You don't have profit with that, personal profit, other than maybe a revenue salary. So it really depends on what the person who is creating the company is looking for his or her return in investment, right? Is it just for pure profit, to recap, right? Or giving back partially, but also for charity, create an entity for that, or just charity work. So it's really what you need. Also, where you're creating it is very important, because it depends as well on the taxes, right? In the UK, with the Charity Commission, for example, for my charity, Professors Without Borders, the sponsor gets the money written off from his tax break, right? But that would not apply for donation outside the UK for the Charity Commission in the UK. So where do you set up your legal entity as well? Luxembourg has certain advantages. Switzerland, Liechtenstein, Zug for the crypto community, right? Texas, Austin, crypto, and so on. So it really depends what you want. What is the end goal? Why are you creating what you're creating? And also which constituency, which country are you setting up the entity? And how would that work as well? Because some entities you need to be as well present physically, need to have an office there. So it needs to be well thought through. Some entities also in the UK, it doesn't cost much, like £100 to create a company. But if you would create one here in Switzerland, you need to pay 20,000. For example, Liechtenstein, right? So it depends, because then you need to, of course, it's capital you can reuse, but you need to bring it forward in the first place in order to create it, right? So it really depends where you want to do it. And the setups is different everywhere.
I have some horror stories with Charity Commission, and it's like you drove a knife into my heart. But
the Charity Commission can be tricky, but it's, I feel them as well to some extent, because, over the last decade, you certainly have seen articles, Oxfam and so on, where leadership has taken advantage of being a charity, right? And so the Charity Commission, I think they have a hard time, because and let me give you an example without saying a name, because I don't like to name shame. But an example I was part of a charity, right? I joined them with true faith that they are operating well. I was introduced by a really good friend of mine, and to join the advisory board, which I did, because what I have seen, and from the short due diligence that came from a friend, so I trusted her, and I still trust her. She didn't know all of that. So we thought it was a really good entity in the UK, right? Charity. What came out, they were not a charity. They were a company. And then all of a sudden there was all of that. Oh, there was so much stuff, a mountain of confusion for me, that I said, okay, I step back. As an advisor, I don't speak for the board at all, but I step back because, transparency-wise, I really am struggling what this is about, right? And they were recognized by certain entities in the UK already, right? And so it's just, it's a really tricky thing, because you don't always know what people are up to until it really blows up into your face.
Yeah, there is always the bad apple, but at the same time, we have to let commerce and philanthropy happen.
Yes, for sure. And I'm, even that bad experience did not hinder me from working with my charity. And I work with a ton of other charities, right? Cherry Blair Foundation, UNAIDS as a global advocate for young women, for HIV/AIDS, UNA UK for the peacekeeping. So I am involved a lot in charity. just exactly because of one black sheep, I'm not gonna be turning my back on what means the most to me, which is giving back, right? And philanthropy is really, it's a really good area as well for people to see where the money goes, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so yeah, I would, everyone listening to this, if you're an entrepreneur or working in corporate, charity work, you can always find time for that. And even if it's just an hour a week, right? It's a really, really good way of giving back.
Thank you for that answer. Yes. So I would like to talk a bit about, I feel that social entrepreneurship and philanthropy, there is a very thin line between them. And there are many business models that someone could say that potentially are trying to exploit people's emotions and behaviors. For example, a very famous social enterprise is Tom's, where for every pair of shoes you buy
one back. Yeah.
Yes. So how do you feel about that? Like, would you call that? I could argue in both sides that it is social entrepreneurship, but it's also philanthropy. Where do you stand? Where do you think? Where is the line for you between philanthropy and social entrepreneurship?
Well, why not, right? Because Tom's is a beautiful model where you can say they're having a business, but at the same time they do give back, and there would be no shoe in the first place if they would not do it at all, right? So why not? I think if that works for them, and it's completely transparent, their model is well known, it works really well. And I even have heard of a model in the Middle East, in Dubai, two women, young women that I have met. I don't know the name now, but they take Tom's to another level, where they say, we build a house for you and we give one house in Africa for free.
Okay.
And when they told me that at a conference, I was just like, wow.
That's big.
Like, that is nuts. But how amazing is that, right? And so I was just thinking, why not? You know, if you as a company have the funds and the resources to do so, because what is the worst thing that can happen? You sell the shoe and you don't give it back. You don't do another shoe. So the company the company is still the company, but if they are so great that they would allocate resources to give back another pair, fully functioning double of that pair to someone in need, I think it's incredible. If you can make that business model work because of the resources you have, I think it's incredible. Why not?
Okay, great. As I say, I'm not sure how much you know about us. We were founded in 2017 as a response to the refugee crisis. We were not NGO people. We were the founding team was myself and two other young men, two entrepreneurs, and one coder. And we launched essentially as a grassroots organization, which we have evolved a lot from that. But we started as a response to the refugee crisis because refugees were in Greece, were coming a lot towards Europe, and we try to find the solution, like after the primary care that they need, to have shelter, food, etc. We thought about integration, and what best way to achieve integration than to have a career and a stable salary and income. What do you think of migration and people coming over? Do you think this serves Europe? Did we do a good enough job as far as you're concerned with it?
It's a tricky question. It's also a very political question. And I think no one really can ever give the right answer to that, to be honest. And I think a lot of people have tried and failed miserably because, whatever my opinion is, someone else will disagree with me, right? So I'm going to try and give it a shot, but it's a very difficult question. I think, if you look historically at immigration, right? We are all immigrants in some way or another, right?
Yeah.
My father's family is historically Italian. My mother's family is historically German, and yet we are all Luxembourgish now, right? And so there has been an immigration at some point. And we are very grateful that we were able to have that immigration and grow up in Luxembourg, in the country that we did, right? My grandmother came, settled in Luxembourg around World War II, right? So fleeing from Nazi Germany. And we were glad we could do that, right? And I think that puts it really into this perspective for me. It is really difficult to say to individuals, oh, you need to let in 500,000 refugees because of war or because of climate change, because of climate flooding or drought. It's really difficult for governments to make these choices, right? Because then you're thinking, well, why? It's like that saying, oh, why give people fish if you can teach them how to fish, right? Why do you give them the ready resource if you can teach them how to do it themselves, right? So why can't we prevent what is happening in these countries in the first place? So these individuals who love their country, I think no refugee wants to leave their country in the first place. They want to be home, right? They grew up there, they're born there. Their life is there, their family is there. A lot of refugees leave their families behind as well, right? Or some parts of their family, they break up because they can't all come, right? And so it's a very tricky reality that we're all living in. And I know in Greece, that was certainly the case. And in a lot of countries, and they will be something for the future as well, because there will be refugee migrations because of war, because of uprisings, because of corrupt government, because of lack of resources. With the pandemic, you have seen that too. And as such, I take my personal example that without the immigration, the economic immigration, well, for my grandmother's side, it was life-threatening, right? My great-grandmother, right, was life-threatening. But also the economic migration from my father's side, then the Italian side, right? I think I'm very grateful that it happened. And as such, I was able to grow up in a country which was safe and stable, and where I felt safe to walk in the street in the evening without thinking that someone is going to shoot me, stab me, rape me, or I'm going to die because a bomb is going to hit my house, right? And so I think it's a very, very sensitive topic. And I would really like to see more involvement in governments for collaboration, for prevention as well. And so in order for governments, and also for auditing, that corrupt governments cannot come into place, right? I know it's a little bit of a woosy-foosy thing I'm saying, because it's a thing that is almost impossible to be doing. It
starts with that. It starts with a thought, and then someone takes it and turns it into reality. That's also entrepreneurship or advocacy that you mentioned before. So you can. For me, you can never think big enough, and it's only a matter of time to start putting one foot in front of the other to actually get where you want. Although, yes, having governments, institutions talk to each other, it's yes.
It is tricky, We have seen it with the pandemic already, with just how vaccines are being distributed, right? I think when leaders it has one thing to do with patriotism and taking care of your people first. That's one thing. And I do understand that too. But it's another thing when you have leaders with extremely high egos, right? And self-interest, short-term memory, where they say, oh, we only serve for 4 years and we want to get the best out of it, right? And it's difficult with all of these things to see, because you, at the end of the day, when you elect a leader democratically, still at the end of the day, you don't look into these people's heads. You don't know how it's going to turn out.
You never know, yeah.
Once they are in power, they're in power. So I think it has a lot of different, there's a lot of factors to be included and a lot of unpredictability. And so as you say, small steps also make a change. And, I try to do my part to it. by my raise awareness campaigns that I do, the work I do with mentoring young women all over the world, speak up, work with organizations, also through my consultancy, through my charity. But yeah, it's a hard thing to do, and yeah, we'll see where I can get to with the little work I can contribute towards this whole big problem. But as you said, let's do it all together, and the power of the community is strong.
Yeah.
And I think we have seen it in Lebanon, right? The power of the community with the young people there. And I think it's possible. And I think people should believe more in themselves than what they do. And that goes along with entrepreneurship as well. You know, take that leap of faith, reach out, create your community, find your tribe. If you are a geek for one thing, I'm sure there's a lot of other people who are geeks for it, right? Find them, create something. And
for whatever it is, it really doesn't matter.
Philanthropy, anything. And
it doesn't matter.
That is how you start the movement.
If I were to put a title of our conversation, is something you said earlier, that we are all migrants. I love it. So yeah, thank you for that. Talking about entrepreneurship, my favorite subject of all. Let's say you have to consult a young refugee who came from wherever to Greece, to Italy, to anywhere in Europe where there are some potentially more resources to work with. But he's young, he doesn't have any resources, he doesn't know many people. What would you advise him? How should he or she start? What are the first steps?
Well, as you mentioned before, integration is key, right? And as such, I think I had a podcast with a young woman from Belgium. She integrated into the Belgian society community as a refugee and created her business, a coffee business, and she's doing very successfully. But she came from no wealth, and it was really hard for her, especially as a woman, and being in these refugee camps in Calais. We all heard and have seen pictures on how that is there. Yeah. And she has made it out there by herself. Wow. And so, and I asked her that question because, you know, who am I? I come from a privileged background, right? I come from Luxembourg, and it's easy for me to say, wow, try this, right? Because I have never lived it. And so it would be a bit pretentious for me to say, well, you should do it like that, because I don't know, right? So I asked her, and what she said, and I said to her, how did you start doing that? And she said, you know, as I said before, start talking to people. What are your ideas? There's a lot of help as well. There's a lot of communities, NGOs and charities that are around you when you do migrate. Is it because you're a refugee or you're an economic migrant? Whatever it is, there's institutions there or government departments that are there for you, specifically for that. And yes, the bureaucracy, also the language barrier can be a big problem. But even with that, you know, there's community groups where you can find help and say, hey, I want to do this. How do I do that? Who do I talk to? Networking, right? Educational things. There's a lot of government incentives to help you integrate as good as you can. Yeah. Because they have learned, a lot of governments, certainly the Belgian government with their extremism as well in Belgium, that if you don't integrate people and you put them into areas apart, it creates a lot of frustration. Because people, they feel like you put them in a can and you put them away, kind of like a way out of sight, out of mind, right? And that's not nice. I would not feel happy with that, right? You don't feel like a human, you feel like an object or something people can just pull away, right? And I think government have learned from that, where they know that if you don't invest in people that come to your country, frustration builds up, anger builds up. Also, you don't want your society, your community to be, a good saying to wrap this, is that a community is only as strong as its weakest link. If the weakest link doesn't work, there will be cracks in the foundation, and that will eventually create some friction, humidity in the foundation base, right? If you imagine a house, right? If there's cracks, there comes stuff in it. And so you need to make sure that everything is solid, and it starts with the weakest link, I think. So go and get help. Ask people around. Everyone has social media. There's leaders on social media, on LinkedIn. Write to them or look what they write, get inspired by them. Start somewhere because they have started somewhere too, right?
Yeah.
Reach out, read the news, listen to podcasts. There's so many gazillions of podcasts on self-development, on community work, on entrepreneurship, on all kinds of topics, right? And I think we do have so many resources now that the potential of integrating yourself faster than our parents did decades ago is much more likely now than ever before.
I totally agree. The internet access to this incredible device, like you can run multiple companies, really liberate yourself from any situation you might be if you have access to a very cheap Android mobile phone. And I'm so happy that technology is developing in such a rate that gives us all these tools to democratize access to everything. So we are slowly going towards the end of our conversation.
Yes, sadly already. This is so much fun.
Yes, indeed it is. So I want to ask our attendees if they have any questions to now write them in the chat. So will Tessy or myself will get to it after my next question. So Tessy, I would like to invite you to a magical world where everything is possible, and I give you a magic wand. What would be the first significant change you would do? You have abundant resources. Okay, of course, we live in the physical environment we are in. You're not going to be a superwoman. I don't, or maybe if you want, maybe in another dream. But in this case, what would you do? What would be the first thing that you would try to change socially?
Wow, there's so many things. And so many things are equally important, I think. But I think to make it an obligation for governments to interact with their youth, to create these round tables where youth, kind of like a democratic process that you have here in Switzerland, where everyone gets the bailout of vote every time there's any vote, so everyone can vote. So it is there at your disposal if you want to, but you don't need to, that everyone has the opportunity to question your leaders. Is it every 3 months? Is it quarterly? Is it every 6 months? But that there's an opportunity for you to ask questions where people need to sit there, your leaders that are elected, for 4 hours or whatever, 2 hours, and really listen to your concern, get back connected with your youth and your people, and just know what is going on. Why did I do the things I do, right? Be accountable and be made accountable. I think that would be such a beautiful process. Yes, not everyone would like that, but I think that would change a lot of frustration. That would create so much more innovation, because if the leaders know what the people need, and if the people know that the leaders are listening, I think it will just create such a different energy in society or in the different communities, and trust that anything from there can be possible.
Awesome. You really took that concept of the magic wand to your answer. Yes.
So.
I build the argument. So
I don't think Trump would do that, but who knows in the future?
You never know, and we are the future. Your children, they are ready to go out and make things happen and say things. The future children, ourselves at the moment, leading organizations, institutions, and whatnot. It's up to us. I have faith personally.
Me too.
Yeah.
If we don't have faith and hope, why are we here, right? Because then why do you wake up in the morning? How frustrating would that be? I think it's really about, and I think that is something that is so powerful. Yes, it's not material, but if you can give someone hope, it's such a strong tool for change. Because from hope, it's like putting a seed in the ground, so much can grow. So I think it's very important. It's a very important, powerful tool.
Awesome. We don't have any real questions. Just Rocio or Rocio says hello from Argentina. Hello.
And Paulo said, I want to contact with Tessy. But you can reach me on my Instagram, Tessy_from_Luxembourg. A lot of people follow me there, see what I do, sometimes write me direct messages. I don't want solicitations on Instagram, of course. So keep it professional or keep it clean. I always need to say that because you would be surprised at some of the messages I get. I don't know how many times I have been asked to marry someone on Instagram, but it's just keep it clean. I really would like that. And if your message is authentic and real, I definitely will get back to you myself. So that is a good way of getting in touch with me.
So no asking Tessy for marriage, no. Please. Everything
I am
else. Married. Alaya says, no question, but I would like to thank you, Tessy and Damian, for hosting this. I think topics you covered were very interesting to hear about and your experiences. Thanks. Thank you, Alaya, for staying until this late. Actually, we have almost everyone who started watching it stayed, and that means that everything you said was really engaging. So I have a question of my own, but first I would like to give you the space to mention anything that I didn't ask you about. What would you like to mention, discuss, talk with me maybe about it?
I think a good question would be, because we talked about refugees, and that is why you created the organization you have in the first place. How it was for me as a woman in the military. I think that is always a good topic, because there's one side of the refugees, but there's also the other side of the peacekeeper, or the military, or the law enforcement, or whatever it is. And for me, as a woman in the military, I must say it was such an incredible time in the ways that I learned so much about theory and how it should be, and actually the reality on the ground. And I think as such, I had really difficult times, and I had attempts of rape as well, and all of these things on my own body from other military, not even locals, but own military, right? So even people in the military are not always good people, but the big chunk of the people that I did my military with for these 6 years are good people, and they're really trying to help, right? And as such, I think I learned that what we see in theory is not always reality, and such the media has such an important role. Going over to why I'm saying this. When you watch something in the media, be careful that what you see reflects the reality, because there's a gatekeeper theory that I want to mention, where it kind of tries to guide you in a way of thinking which is not always authentic and the truth. And especially nowadays, and that is very dangerous, where the media is being used to portray a certain angle of the story and ignore the others. And I think, when we talk about refugees, when we talk about displacement, when we talk about military, when we talk about entrepreneurship, when we talk about all kinds of domains, health, pandemic, vaccination, the media plays a very big role in that. And just inform yourself, do your due diligence. And I think that would already change a lot moving on from here, because there's so much out there and there's so much noise. Try to find the calm and the truth in all of these, and through that create what you want to create. I think that is what I would leave it with.
That's very interesting that you mentioned, and coming from what you said, I feel so bad, and it makes me very happy that this enables you now to tell us this and to make us better people.
Well, Sabrine, she has a very good question, actually.
Yeah.
I will answer it quickly. I know we're running out of time. And, quite frankly, 1 minute will not cover this question. But you're right, that some, giving back 1% can seem insignificant, right? If you notice that some companies need to pay so much to different governments, right? Because there is a corporate tax and there's even a third tax for December and all of these things. There's really a lot of things out there, and you would think that governments would put something like that in place, right? Because asking it from corporates is one thing, but why governments wouldn't give back some of theirs, and actually kind of like look at the Norwegian government. You pay a lot of tax in Norway and Scandinavian countries, but you get a really incredible quality of life back, right? The health system is incredible. You grow old, you are safe. Yeah. Whatever you need is covered. And I don't think UK or other developed countries can say the same, right? So not even talking about developing countries, right? And I think it's there, Sabrina, I would direct the question towards our leaders, right? Because I think they put in place the policies and laws that govern our society. And I wouldn't punish the corporates who are trying to create returns for themselves, but rather put it towards the governments that have registered them, as you said before, right? Where do you register your corporation, right? Yeah. And what are the laws that create this structure for you, right? There, I would go and knock on the door and say, hey, why can't we include something in that perspective a little bit more, where we will oblige governments, corporates to give back a little bit as a return to get that tax break, right? Or as a return to get whatever that is, perk of why you registered where you register, right? So I think that is kind of like where I would stir your question.
All right, such an interesting topic. Open, Sabrine. Thank you, Sabrine, for your insightful question.
If you want to read it as well, share it with me too.
Okay. Yeah. So Paulo says, "Thank you, Tessy." I think he wants to write Tessy. I am refugee in Kenya, and please, I would like to remember me on Instagram. And it's about local association in the camp. So I think he asks to remember his name, Paulo Kiza. And I assume he's going to, reach out to you on Instagram. Hanan says, thank you very much for this great discussion and insights. Sabrine comes back. You are an inspiring woman. I totally agree. I totally agree with that. I read your LinkedIn bio, as I mentioned before, but the real life, it's so much better. And we are very grateful to have you with us today, Tessy. Any last thoughts before we wrap it up?
No, it's just about, well, thank you for having me. Thank you for listening all the way to the end. We haven't lost anyone, which is insane. I'm sorry. Yeah. This is really great. No, it was so much fun. And it's also nice for me to reflect as well. By asking the questions you asked, it also made me remember as well why I'm doing the things I'm doing. So I'm very grateful for that reflection as well and reminder. So thank you for that. And then, just, keep in touch. Let's support one another, share each other's work, tell me about what you're up to. And, let's try to stay positive and definitely stay healthy, because healthy is the new wealthy. So let's look after one another.
And that's what I want to wish you and your family, to have a very long and healthy life. Thank you very much for joining us tonight, Tessy. And thanks to all the attendees. Looking forward to our next event with awesome guests. Thank you also to our team. I get to have the pleasure to talk with you, and other people are doing the work for me. So I'm very grateful to everyone who made this happen. Thank you all. Have a lovely night.
Thank you, Damian. Thank you, everyone. Bye.